So we had the Fed meeting yesterday, and I will tell you, it never ceases to amaze me how the market reacts to news, because the Fed, going into the Fed meeting, it was a 99% chance they weren't going to lower the rates. And when the rates didn't get lowered, the market reacted. We're going to talk about that. But most interesting about that meeting yesterday wasn't so much what the Fed said, it was what they didn't say. We're going to go into detail. No one's really talking about this, about the things that they've omitted and not said versus what they said last time. I think will make an impact on the market. Also, we've got, the resilience of these cryptos is just amazing. And what's next for crypto? What's the next big event that's going to push crypto? We're going to talk about that. Without further ado, let's just get into it. This market, like I said, has rebounded. Yesterday the market dipped considerably. And I shouldn't say considerably. Some things dipped considerably. Some things like Bitcoin and Ethereum barely were phased, right? So it just shows you how strong that market is. Actually, there was still buying in the ETF, still buying of Bitcoin yesterday by treasury companies and things like that. But you look at looks like this market has rebounded pretty nicely. Pump.fund, like 27% up. But the little other ones, that's because it was down considerably. If you look at XRP, 1 point something, you look at Bitcoin, it just didn't move. It didn't phase, the Fed statement didn't phase it as much as some of these other cryptos. Total market cap, we did not, yesterday we wicked off this floor of support here. We wicked off this floor of support on total market cap. We got down a couple $100 billion yesterday, and we're back up. So very interesting. XRP, XRP is just in a consolidation phase. You can see it bounced off that 786 Fibonacci yesterday. Hasn't closed a candle below it. And, that $3 mark is a strong floor of support there. So, next up for XRP, hopefully we retest the highs again. Definitely retest that one Fibonacci at 340 and change. So this is another interesting fact. Before we get into the Fed stuff, we looked at Google Trends. This is over the past 12 months. As you can see, Bitcoin, XRP peaked back in November, December. Recently, we saw XRP almost reach that same peak again. Bitcoin is starting to rise again. But this is the interesting thing. Ethereum is at, high peak. People don't usually search out Ethereum. They search out exciting things like Bitcoin or XRP or Solana or Sui or other things like that. But right now, people are starting to pay attention to Ethereum. And I said the other day, I'm not selling my Bitcoin for Ethereum, but that doesn't mean I don't consolidate, or I should say collect more Ethereum right now. And I have done this over the last couple of weeks, and it's proven pretty well. So let's look at this. Altcoin season. Again, are we in altcoin season? No, but people are preparing for it because this is the time to prepare for altcoin season. Not when altcoin season is upon us, because it's too late at that point. And if you haven't been accumulating for the last couple of years, well, you're not in a terrible spot right now for certain altcoins. I just don't think the entire market's going to pump. You got to pick your poison. And I've picked Solana, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Sui, XRP, and a couple other small ones, but that's the majority of my holdings. Cardano, those are the majority of my holdings. All right, let's get into that Fed meeting discussion. Now, here is the interesting thing. It's not so much what the Fed says. Yes, they didn't lower the rates. Yes, they said the tariffs, they're still looking at the tariffs. They're still data dependent, but they're looking at tariffs. But that makes 5 straight meetings in a row where they kept the rates the same. The economy is faring okay. If you look at the economy, there's some deceptive information in here, but the unemployment was a little bit better, or the new jobs from ADP was a little bit better than expected. The GDP came out stronger than expected. The home prices were falling a little bit faster than expected. GDP price index was a little bit lower than expected. Oh man, this is so counterintuitive to what the Fed did, but the GDP price index actually fell. It didn't go up as much as it expected. The tariffs aren't having that profound of effect on the economy yet. Now they could. That's what the Fed's waiting to see. And I think they're going to have a good indication that by September, hopefully. But pending home sales down. Well, of course they are. Rates are high, and they've been high for a long time, and homeowners have been holding on to not selling because they just don't know if they want to buy at the higher rates when they have a 3-4% interest rate, maybe 5. So we'll see. I do believe that today we're going to see jobless claims. It's expected to be around 222,000, a little bit higher than last time around. We'll see what happens. But let's talk about the Fed. So this is their statement, and it's always interesting, not so much what they say, but what they don't say, what they exclude versus last time. So if you look at this, all those swings in net exports continue to affect the data. It says have affected, continue to affect. No big deal here. Recent indicators suggest that that's a new statement, growth of the economic activity. So they're saying the economic activity is actually growing. The economy is in a good spot. They got rid of this statement, has continued to expand at a solid pace. Now they said economic activity moderated in first half of the year. The unemployment rate remains low and labor market conditions remain solid. Okay, so I just contradicted myself that the growth is moderated in the first half, which means it started to level off. It grew and then it started to level off, okay? I don't know if I agree with that. The numbers don't actually support that as much. It says uncertainty about the economic outlook remains elevated. They got rid of has diminished but. This is bearish language here. Has diminished but. It's almost like the Fed is wanting the economy to slow down further to prove a point. Now, if you go all the way down here, here's the very interesting piece. There's the Fed governors that actually vote, and typically it's a unanimous decision for, decades, a unanimous decision. This time was a little different. It says voting for the monetary policy action where Jerome Powell, they go through the people who voted for it, not Michelle Bowman, not Adriana Kluger, I don't think she was there, voting against the action were Michelle Bauman and Christopher Waller, who preferred to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by 0.25 percentage point at this meeting. Absent and not voting was Adriana Kluger. So this tells me that we have two dissenters. Now, obviously, those are the two people in the running to become the next Fed chair, and obviously they want to impress the new boss, Donald Trump, because he's the one who appoints them or recommends the appointee to the Fed chair position. And so obviously they'd like to suck up to the boss a little bit, but there is a good case. They probably made a case and an argument for their decisions. And it was outvoted, understandably. Why? You have the current Fed chair, Powell, is the boss, and he doesn't want to raise the rates or lower the rates right now because he believes that the tariffs will still have a profound effect on the economy because the economic outlook, the uncertainty about the economic outlook right here remains elevated. So this will be interesting how this plays out. But all in all, the Fed meeting was a non-event except for the language that changed because, we knew they weren't going to lower the rates. Now, here's the thing that I just struggle with sometimes is that you have yesterday, if you look at these charts, if we go into a little bit more detail on any of these charts, let's go to the 30-minute on XRP, let's say. Yesterday, we swung low, about to $3. It tested I don't think we went below $3, but it tested the $3 mark. Down, it was down, what about, from the high to the low yesterday? Probably, what is that, 15%, 16% dip? Look, people, we knew that the Fed wasn't going to lower the rates. The CME Fed Market Rate Watch, 98%, 99% chance the Fed wasn't going to lower the rates. For some reason, go on the X, the Twitter, the crypto Twitter, and everyone's like, Fed's going to lower the rates today. What makes you say that? There's no indicators anywhere that said the Fed was going to lower the rates. It was hype, and you got to watch out for the hype. Now, here's the next thing I'm going to tell you, is that over the next couple weeks, what's going to happen to crypto? If you look, we were on a long period of consolidation. XRP is no stranger to long periods of consolidation. If you look from here all the way to here, this is a good period of time where XRP just kind of went sideways, consolidated, and traded. Now, what's going to be the next catalyst? That's the question. You have a lot going on with XRP. You've got the SEC case that can be dropped at any moment. Supposedly, I've heard that for years. You've got XRP ETFs. You've got XRP in banking, going for their banking license. There's so much news that could potentially hit for XRP. Now, this is one that I watch. I like trading XRP. Good news could send it up. Bad news could send it back down because we're at a pivotal level right here. If we bust below that 786, we could go back and test the lower realms here above the 0.5 Fibonacci, somewhere around the 220 to 230 range. I mean, we could really go down significantly if we have negative news, because this is all recent. I mean, we're talking about the last month. We've gone up about 88%. Is that correct? We've gone up a lot. We've gone up a lot. So this is the thing, is that you've got to be very vigilant and careful. I wouldn't be opening up serious long positions right now. I'd be very careful because it's going to take some significant news to push it higher. But that same news, if not what is expected, and we learned this yesterday, could also push it lower. So XRP, I'm very bullish. Bitcoin handled itself very well yesterday. Very well yesterday. If you look at what Bitcoin did, let's do BTC, boom, let's do it against the US dollar. Bitcoin moved, it did swing a bit, but it wasn't nearly to the point that we were getting squeamish about it. Oh, here we go. So yesterday we dipped down just a little bit. And so Bitcoin's becoming way more stable than it has in the past. I mean, we dipped down, considerably, but 1.9%, 2%, that's starting to sound like a stock. I mean, crypto, like you saw Bitcoin, XRP, 10, 15% swings, whereas you have Bitcoin 1.9 swings. So Bitcoin moves 1%, do alts move 5, 10, 20, 30%, depends on the market cap probably. But it's a very interesting to watch Bitcoin mature. Another strong one is Ethereum. I mean, if you look at what Ethereum did, pretty similar. I mean, yeah, we did wick down, but not to the effect. Let's see, we wicked down at one point. We were down, about 3%. So a little more than Bitcoin, but not as much as XRP and some of the other ones. So all in all, I'm super bullish on this market. We are in a very strong market. Now, that could change very quickly overnight. This is not financial advice. I am not your financial advisor. Make sure to do your own research before getting into any of these. And with that, I will see you next time.